Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 10th and final Intersections of Change. My name is Chile, and I am the curator and license holder for TEDx Cape Town. Intersections of Change has been a 10-part series where we have engaged with thought leaders and change makers from across the TEDx community and had conversations with individuals, panels from both youth to those who are a little bit older, finding out how they are adjusting to a world with COVID-19 and asking them to share any insights they have had over this period. Our conversations have spanned from those from social, economic, educational, cultural, technology, and much more, giving us an opportunity to better understand how we and the organizations around us are adjusting to these current times. This year was quite an interesting one. We started off thinking we were going to host a main event, and we even recruited a team to make that main event happen. And we realized a few months in that this was not going to be the case. So we pivoted, and we pivoted to online events. And this was tough for us because we definitely love our in-person events where we get to build our community. And so we had to figure out, how do we build our community online? And the Intersections of Change has been the step that we took to kind of maintain that community and share some of our findings in keeping our community and you who are watching this engaged. We hope that you've enjoyed it, and we hope that you've loved coming this journey with us. None of this would have been possible without our partners or our team. And the co-curator Alex, who helped me on this journey, will just come up next to thank them.
Nothing could prepare us for this year. Nothing. We were ready. We had our roadmap, and we had an amazing main event planned for you, where each and every one of you would be sitting in the audience, and we would be able to feed off of your energy. But fortunately, because it certainly wasn't unfortunate, we pivoted to our online digital program, Intersections of Change. And from the inception of the big idea through to this here now recap has been an incredible journey. It's been a hard road. We've pushed the team to the absolute limits, but it has been so inspiring. Every single segment has brought us joy, reflection, inspiration, transformation, all the shins. And we could not have done it without our incredible team of volunteers that have put in endless hours to make this happen. And to our team, I say thank you to each and every one of you. To our speakers for blowing us away, for sharing your ideas, and for keeping us company in a really, really tough time. And to our absolutely incredible partners, who this would not have been made possible, a very special thank you to the United States Consulate General, Cape Town, South Africa, PayFast, our venue partner Workshop 17, where we hosted some of our Intersections of Change episodes, Black Wolf Agency, ProVeg, Load a Lot, and Missing Link, the presentation powerhouse, technical support behind each and every one of our Intersections of Change digital programs. Without Missing Link, the virtual world would not have been made possible. We are so excited to share this whirlwind of laughs, joy, and stressful anecdotes. This is definitely, in the toughest time, our TEDx Cape Town team at its best. Enjoy.
Hi, Tumi here. So I hosted the first Intersections of Change conversation that kicked off our online eventing series in 2020. Our conversation was with Butler, where we spoke about unmasking social change. The conversation starts with me asking Ema a little bit about where she was at when we first met her, which was on the TEDx Youth at Cape Town stage in 2018, where she told us about a challenge she solved and a challenge many women face, which is finding access to sanitary pads when we need them. And I remember listening to Emma's talk in 2018 and thinking, oh my goodness, what infectious energy and positivity and just like grit to go out there and get stuff done.
Always, is driving me to solve problems is really just that addiction to solving the problems. And I've found that a lot of the social ventures or social impact that my ventures tend to have is always a consequence of solving a problem that I'm facing myself. So it's never, I used to think, actually, when I spoke about entrepreneurship, I used to say quite wrongfully that it's a selfish approach. But it's wrong to use the word selfish, because selfish means that you have a disregard for others. And I've now learned that it's more self-centered. Like I would sit and think with Ntombi, for example, what problem am I having? Oh, I can't access pads when I need them most. And consequentially, every other woman has had this experience just by virtue of the fact that they have a uterus, So there was the social impact in that, but it had started with wanting to solve a problem for myself. And I think that's a really powerful catalyst in social entrepreneurship, is when you look at a problem that you are having and it affects other people. It's something I'll speak to a bit later as we go into the new venture, but often when we assume other people have a problem and we try to solve that and we package that as social entrepreneurship, we run into the realization that we kind of maybe assumed the problem that they were having. So this addiction to solving problems has a nice consequence of social impact in the stuff that I do. And I do it because I think, what might other people be experiencing, but what problem am I experiencing? And I try and solve that first.
So that's interesting about like solving the problem that you're experiencing, because some of the stories that you've shared with me before with your new venture, Afika, actually were not problems that you were facing, but problems that you were noticing. And that seems like a subtle but actually fundamental change. So can you tell us a little bit about Afika and how that change made you rethink the way that you were approaching that problem specifically?
Right. So I think you've articulated really well in saying that it's more a problem that I had noticed. But I want to stress how there comes a point where you have to choose to take responsibility of your citizenship in the situation, and that needs to drive you to take action. So the particular problem that I had was I noticed hello, Corona arrived, and I was busy driving somewhere before lockdown even, and I noticed that there were a whole bunch of people in a taxi squashed and they were driving past, and I just thought, this is so fundamentally wrong. These people are in a confined space, sharing the same air. We know how easily contagious this virus is. We know that it is just fundamentally wrong how people who had the privilege of traveling have brought this problem to this country, and people who are not in as privileged positions are going to suffer as a consequence of that. That upset me. That to me was a problem. I had the problem that people were not wearing face masks and they needed to be wearing face masks. And I identified that as a problem that I noticed, but it bothered me so much because it wasn't being solved, right? So the onus, at least for me, felt like it was myself. How I'm going to solve that problem, as opposed to this thing of, like Michael Jackson likes to say, start looking at the man in the mirror type of vibe. I mean, you see this thing going on and you think, this is a problem I'm noticing, but oh well, I'll just describe how it's a problem and I won't take action to change it. So yeah, it is in a sense noticing a problem, but if by making it your own problem, or at least for me, by making it my own problem, it drove me to want to take action to change.
Hey everyone, it's Chili again. So in conversation 2, I had the privilege and honor of chatting to Rich Mulholland, who is a past TEDx Cape Town speaker and a well-known member of the TEDx Cape Town community. And we had the conversation about forward to normal, or what I like to call the more esoteric title of atomic adjacency, and how in today's day and age you have to adjust to a world that accounts for COVID-19. He was in the industry where they do a lot of presentations, and basically within 24 hours they went from having tons of bookings throughout the year to having none, because in-person events basically disappeared.
We exist where audience exists. So there's somebody standing up, delivering a presentation. We've hopefully helped them organize this from a content point of view. They're on stage. We work with staging companies, event companies, and all of this will come together. And we try to bring these people together and then share knowledge to this massive of attention that exists. But then we have to all remember this date here where everything changed. So on the 15th of March, Cyril Ramaphosa declares a national state of disaster, imposes travel bans, and says that all events, live events, are going to be shut down. This is before the lockdown was announced, but this was all live events were shut down. By the next day at 10 o'clock, Missing Links company revenue went to 0%. Literally every single client that we were doing work for contacted us and said, it's on hold, or we're canceling it. We cannot do our event anymore. 23 years, I'm 45, I've had my company more than half my life. Nothing like this has ever happened to me before.
And he had a 5-point system of basically how you could adjust for a world with COVID-19. And one was by knowing your enemy, or knowing your nemesis, right? You need to know what you're up against. And then once you know who your nemesis is, it's not events, but it was just actually doing events in person, right? Then you make a plan, and now the question is, do you pivot? Do you try something completely new? Or do you shift slightly in a slightly different direction? So that boiled down to point number 2, which was narrowing the field. And basically narrowing the field was kind of finding what is that thing that's very close to what I'm currently doing. Then give people a reason to believe in why you are now the person who can take care of that new thing. And generally, because that new thing is just a slight deviation from what your original path was, it's very easy to prove that you're competent and capable in delivering that new thing. And then give them a reason to engage. People always need a reason to engage. And then once you do, double down, right? Become a fast fixer more than a first mover, right? Because first movers want to be the first person in the space. Fast fixers want to adjust and constantly make micro adjustments to make sure that they're giving the people in that space what it is that they want.
Once you figured out what people want to engage with you on, once you figure that out, like this is the thing that they want, this is the bit of spaghetti that's stuck to the roof. Once we figured out what that was, double down, own that in everything. I remember years ago, I was at actual TED Global in Oxford, and Jeff Bezos was there. He wasn't speaking, he was just in the audience. And I went up to him the day before, and it's quite funny if you can see what's on my Kindle. I was always embarrassed for a while that it was Eclipse from the Twilight Saga. And I used to make a joke about it. I apologize for reading that book, but hey, I loved it, whatever. And until somebody told me and spotted the one that I read at the bottom. But anyway, so I loved my Kindle. I'm still a big fan of my Kindle. And I went up to Jeff Bezos one day and I saw him. I was like, dude, could you mind signing my Kindle? So he writes this customer's rule. Anyway, the next day he announced that he'd bought Zappos, the shoe company. And he did this talk that day online, and it was like a video you could watch. And I watched it from my hotel room in Oxford. And I was like, this is so slick. This guy's just done this slick presentation, but it looks like he's done it in the backyard of a courtyard of this hotel. And I went to him the next day and I said to him, dude, you just did this talk that we would only coach people to deliver a talk of this level, but it really looked like you did it off the fly, but it was perfect. So I went to him and I asked him, but like, how were you so slick? How was this presentation delivered so well? And he said, well, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Do you remember what I wrote on your Kindle yesterday? I said, of course. I said, you wrote customer's rule. He said, that's it. He said, that's all we've got. He said, Amazon is a one-trick pony. We only have one thing we have to solve for every day. It's customer's rule. That is it. And I said, dude, but it's a great trick. He said, yes. He said, that's the one secret to business. It's okay to be a one-trick pony, provided it's a really good trick. And what we'd figured out is solving people, the aspect of online events that we were solving was a great trick. So once we figured out what our good trick was, we doubled down. I started writing like arbitrary little things like, and look at this. I mean, it's a terrible clickbaity video title, but that's what we needed. Not knowing this trick could ruin your next presentation on Zoom. We wanted to get people earning things. And again, every conversation that we had was around something to do with how to present better in this online space.
This conversation with Rich was extremely enlightening and was one of my favorite conversations. And I like that element of don't always pivot. Sometimes it's okay just to make slight adjustment and double down. So good luck, everyone.
Hi, Renal Swarpaya. I had the absolute honor of hosting Conversation 3 titled Creativity Inspires Hope. And I spoke to 4 amazing talented African artists, including Rushdie Jazz, Malam Wevi, Winslow Skalkbeck, and Zolani Mahola. Now, for me, it was a creative journey of self-reflection. Our artists shared with us what lockdown taught them about themselves, also just the journey that they experienced and some of the creative work that inspired them and that they shared with the world during lockdown. Here are some throwbacks. I hope you enjoy.
On the 26th of September 2012, I was diagnosed with colon cancer, 3 major surgeries, 8 months of chemotherapy, and an ileostomy bag attached to the right side of my tummy for 8 months. And then I had to have the bag reversed, and with God's grace and mercy, I'm still here. And really grateful just to continue what I believe to be my sole purpose, which is to uplift, empower, and inspire through music and all the other things I'm involved in. Yeah.
In preparation for today, I know that you are conceptualizing a book right now. And that book is titled How Cancer Saved Me. How do you go from receiving that news 8 years ago and being on this journey to now conceptualizing a book titled How Cancer Saved You?
So yeah, the book is called How Cancer Saved My Life, and it's in the conceptual stage at the moment. And it's actually first and foremost quite multidimensional, but first and foremost, it's inspired by one of my favorite quotes by Mark Twain, which is the 2 most important days of our lives is the day we are born and the day we find out why. And that has certainly been a part of my reflection in my healing journey subsequently. And it's been 8 years this year with God's grace. And this book is to inspire hope, fortitude, and courage for many other precious souls that are dealing with personal challenges right now.
Tell us what Sugar Water is and how lockdown actually allowed Sugar Water to happen.
So I've had this, I've been performing this year, made 15 years that I've been on stage since my debut way back when in Cape Town. And I'd gotten to a point where I really wanted to own my art. And because I'm in this visual, multimedia world, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a project. I'm going to publish it online. I'm going to have full creative control. And that's what I did. So lockdown happened. And suddenly I'm by myself, self-isolating in my apartment. And at that point, all these mental health issues started coming up for me. I had to really confront things like my depression and my anxiety. Because I'm by myself, I can't see anybody because obviously everybody is protecting themselves. At that point we were at level 5, but who knew? We found that out afterwards. So I really just went, you know what? This project has been circling in my head. I'm going to dive head first into it. And that's what I did.
Rest human rights. How did that even start? Like, where did that begin?
So the National Theatre of Namibia called on artists in Namibia to respond to human rights during this pandemic. And I hadn't been creating much, actually. I was on lockdown before lockdown on my own sort of personal journey with rest and what it meant for me. And then I just honestly I don't think I've ever actually edited that poem. It was completely free-flowing and honest, like a diary entry almost. And then we decided to make a short film with it. My husband and I, Martina Mushenje, who's also a fantastic artist, visual artist, producer, everything, the man's and everything man. And then we started recording bits and pieces and we put it together and we handed it in. It was difficult for me to speak on human rights because I was quite isolated. And I knew initially, I felt like, okay, this calls for a very political message about how I know in Namibia, our leaders aren't doing the best they can for our people right now. And I mean, there are all of these different things that we can call in. But I had been so removed from that, and I knew that speaking on human rights really had to come from a very personal place, and that's how it sort of flowed into what this is.
I feel like I'm in such amazing company, you know, with everyone who has spoken today. Really, it's been phenomenal, you know, to listen to everybody speaking. Rushdeen was just absolutely mind-blowing. Mel, Winslow. So I feel as though there is a real move, there's a real wave of people who are, and particularly creatives, but I think it's happening in all fields, of people who are really becoming more and more intentioned in terms of their life's work. And I really echo a lot of the statements of everyone who's spoken here tonight, you know, who has felt that this lockdown time, oh, my children, this lockdown time there have been many gifts, and one of those gifts has been giving ourselves or affording ourselves that time to really connect with what it is that we are meant to be doing here on this earth authentically. And I love what Mel said about rest, you know, and everyone said about getting out of our old habits and in seeing the gift in the moment now. The same journey.
Yeah.
Here we are. Here we are. I felt all of you so much.
No, you know what I love that we were all, it's like we're speaking from one voice. The more I'm listening to this, I've had this exact thought. I've gone through this exact thing. We can't ignore the synchronicity there is mind-blowing.
I'm Bianca, member of the Audience Experience team and driver of IOC4. Our team hosted a very special event around Women's Day entitled Decade of Women. It was such an honor to work with our panelists, 3 exceptional women from very different backgrounds offering very unique perspectives. There was Dr. Sandeep Magona, Dr. Eve, and the hilarious Shimmy Isaacs. Our aim with this event was to challenge the status quo and to inspire action and change. When it came to picking a moderator, my friend and mentor, Masidi Mdise, was the first person that came to mind. As a women's rights activist, professional speaker, and business owner, she was a natural fit.
Alex, thank you so much for that warm welcome, and welcome everybody, and thank you so much for giving your time and joining us this evening for a discussion that I'm really amped and excited about. Firstly, because of the caliber and the quality of the panelists that we have, and secondly about the fact that we are all called to do something with our lives. And for me, I feel very kind of empowered or enchanted about this notion of emancipating women. So yeah, I'm really, really excited for this evening.
And Shimmy Isaacs also said it's very important to take back your narrative, to create your own storyline, and to give yourself permission to reposition yourself.
Okay, I mean, in my honors year, I focused my thesis on the representation of women in color within film, television, and theater. And that's what is important, is that we've got people sitting at the table making decisions for us, about us, without us. So, which is why I decided as a writer, producer, and actress to take back my narrative and start to create my own storylines. That is the important thing. I, in particular, focus on stories where people who look like me and you are heroes, because I do think that even our struggles and poverty tends to become glamorized in the industry of entertainment to make a buck or two. Okay, but we don't see the story of the father or mother that gets up at 5 a.m. and do their damnedest to give their children the best life or best education possible, which in my case, my mother only had grade 9. My father only had grade 11, and yet they still had the foresight to send me to an all-white school, okay, because they understood that my power is going to lie within my intellectual property and within my knowledge. So, basing this on gender, I am not afraid to walk into an all-male room. That's the important thing. I am not scared because I consist of as much information as you do, and sometimes more. about the topic at hand.
So my name is Babalo Bezadenhout, and my role in this event, I was one of the speaker liaisons, myself and Ziggy. So exciting, such a great opportunity. It's such a great topic, being it that it is now 16 days of activism. I think every one of us need to go back to this conversation on how do we go about attaining gender equality in this decade. I think another thing that stuck out for me was the importance of men in this conversation. I think it was Dr. Cindy Magona who said, men of conscience should stand up. We're currently in 16 days of activism, and it's not just enough for you to say you're not an abuser. You have to join the fight. How do you join the fight?
Men are born boys or men. It doesn't make that person automatically a prospective abuser. They can be in a position to talk to their brothers, to talk to their friends, to talk to their employers. We are all agents as we are social beings. We can work for the good of all. The thing is, the trauma we're talking about for women and poor people, in Xhosa we say, is a gazini. I wrote a whole, not with the long word the doctor used there, but in simple writing, we say it's in the blood. Yeah. There are things that happen that you feel or you fear or you love, not because of things that happen to you, because of something that happened to your great-great-great-grandfather. Trauma runs in our bones, in our blood. So now, men of conscience should stand up by preventing, by talking to their brothers, and by just saying this is not right.
For me, the highlight, definite highlight, is actually finding out that the doctor, one of the doctors that was speaking to us, actually Dr. Eve. I mean, the Dr. Eve. I was so excited, and I've heard her speak on radios, on TV, and to have this opportunity to actually be able to liaise with her was nerve-wracking, at the same time so exciting. For me, I think the biggest takeaway from this was actually learning about trauma. People are silently dying because they are suffering from one trauma or the other, and it then spills, or you bleed in different ways, be it your relationship or be it your work life, whatever it is. And people need to take that cognizance upon themselves to ask, what is the trauma and where am I bleeding, and to be able to start the healing work. So that for me was a great takeaway. And my friends think that I'm so intelligent. I was like, no, actually I heard it from Dr. Eve.
This brings
so
collective trauma. And what does that feel like? That brings an underlying sense of anxiety and tension into all of us. So we kind of walk around with a certain level of aggression, which we are in defensive or offensive mode. And this plays out in our bedrooms. This plays out in our intimate relationships with each other. So if we look at my stance that I'm working with right now in terms of men's trauma and why they perpetrate trauma on women, and I'm saying this not as an excuse, in fact, just the opposite, because I feel very strongly that we need to be understanding men, using compassion and kindness in order to bring about change in their behavior so we can better protect women, so that women can thrive in the way that they need to be thriving. So then I want to end with something which, as I said, which I think we need is to think about pleasure. And the solution to getting women to really rule is to give women an orgasm. That's what's going to happen. We've got to close the pleasure gap. We've got to find equity. There is a whole movement called Close the Pleasure Gap, where if we had women who were more assured of themselves in bed, if there were women who were more keen to open their voices and say,
too late for me.
This is what this is what I want, we would have women who were happier and men who would feel much better about themselves.
Aya, how's it going?
Yes, sir. Good, man. How you doing?
Good, man. So good. Good to see you again. It's been months. we since
It's
we
been a while.
we're invited here to reflect on the fact that we were co-hosts on the Intersections of Change number 5. That was called Aligning Humanity, Aligning Closer to Nature. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, we had a great set of panelists as well. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, the speakers were great. We had Ian Mccallum, who's like this multifaceted human being, just like a crazy. He's a psychologist and a poet and an author and an ecologist and a safari guide and an ex-Springbok rugby player. Exactly. And then we had Claire Janish, who's just like an amazingly inspiring human being. She's the founder of Biomimicry South Africa, which was this practice that like, it's just like gave me hope. It gives me hope for the future, you know, hope for our species.
Claire was actually also at the very first TEDx event, wasn't she?
True, in 2011. Yeah,
that was pretty cool to have her back. One of my key takeaways was basically the idea that Ian introduced of a keystone individual. And how he breaks it down basically is that you have species within their respective ecosystems where if it disappeared tomorrow, the consequences would be dire, right? Because they're so crucial to the ecosystem within which they exist. Whereas us human beings, unfortunately, aren't all that useful to much anything else in nature outside of ourselves. So his challenge to us was, how do we integrate with nature? How do we coexist with nature in such a way that we actually value additive instead of extracting value, and we end up becoming a keystone individual or a keystone society even, to broaden the idea. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea, and it was a pretty cool challenge to set for myself going forward as well.
If we are going to be doing anything about the crises, I think the first thing is that we have to look at ourselves. I think it's so important that we do that before we start looking around, pointing fingers and blaming other people, other governments, other countries for what they're doing. We all need to look at ourselves with respect to what it is that we are doing that's complicit and certainly contributing towards environmental crises of our time.
One of the key takeaways for me was when Claire highlighted the fact that through the practice of biomimicry, that we can see nature, the natural world around us as measure and model and mentor. You know, we can adopt a learning mindset and realize that there's a lot of wisdom around us. That was definitely one of my key takeaways.
And if we shift our lens to nature to start learning from nature how to design our products, processes, and systems in ways that nourish life, we can. If you want to be that keystone individual, what are you heading towards? And if you want to really be a change maker in our world, what should you head towards? And what would the systems of our world be like if we actually emulated nature at every level? Because it struck me that wherever you look, there's projections into the future of dystopia and disaster. You know, there's no projection of what would the world look like if we actually did function as a welcome species on this planet and contribute to life.
Definitely one of the highlights for me was being able to play Ian Mccallum's talk from 2015, and he had in which he delivered poems, and then one of his poems was Wilderness, and there's a line in that poem that goes, one day your soul will call to you with a holy rage.
Yeah.
Goosebumps.
Shivers, man, shivers. So my highlight there was basically engaging with our community and just being taken aback a bit how widespread the number of people in our community is basically. We had people call in from New York, we had people in Cairo. Literally the saying Cape to Cairo couldn't have been more fitting. And it was a very engaging conversation where we actually towards the end didn't get to all the questions that the community had because there was so much interest and engagement in the conversation. And for me, that was very rewarding and fulfilling, particularly with all the planning and all the hard work that went into the behind the scenes for the event.
I mean, you talk about planning, you can't plan for everything because some things just happen totally out of your control, and that's exactly what happened. And I'm sure one of the biggest sort of bloopers, stressful moments that you remember was when Ian Mccallum's sound just wasn't working.
taking a quick little note here, I'm seeing that many people in the comments are just saying that your sound is a bit distorted. I know that we had a team member who's there. Sure, if he has a microphone. If not, then no problem. We can just continue as we are and just apologize.
Okay, well, I'm also beginning to get a bit of jerky sound from your side, so just hang on a second. I've got my technician here.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And we had rehearsals, and we had tech people that I even went and dropped off a microphone at his house like a few days before, a new one. And then we had a teammate.
I remember. That was fun.
What a nightmare.
That was fun, but we made it through, and I think the community loved that moment even more because it showed like some of the challenges of trying to put together something during this time, which is unprecedented of, I guess, COVID-19, where we had people dialing in from various locations, but with the marvel of technology, we're able to get it done. But it was very entertaining, man.
Yeah, I'm proud of us, man. We were part of trying something new. The TEDx Cape Town team just totally just said, cool, let's innovate around this year. And yeah, I'm pretty happy to have been involved, especially with you, man.
Yeah, same here, man. It was really great working with you as well.
And the team. I think we can give everybody a high five. Should we do it? On the camera. You ready?
Boom!
1, 2, 3. Boom! Okay, let's do it again together. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait. We got to count. Same time. Okay. 3, 2.
3, 2, 1.
Boom!
I think I went too quickly, actually. Last one, properly this time.
Last one. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Boom! That's it.
Cool. I think we can stop the recording.
The IOC 6 and 7 was linked to TED Countdown, which is a global initiative launched by TED to kind of really showcase the urgency of climate change and the impact on our world, and how like this time is a crucial time. Like we've still got enough to save. We can still fix the world. We can still make things more, we can still turn things around, and we can still save what we have. We're not too late to do anything about it. But if we leave it much longer, it will become too late. So in both of the events, there was different focuses. So Countdown IOC 6 was looking at different people, let's say change makers, people who are already trying to raise awareness around climate change. And in the second event, which is IOC 7, was more about showcasing local people actually doing initiatives in the community. So such as recycling, food waste disposal, all of these types of things, which really brought to the attention what kind of initiatives are happening around, what type of things we can be involved in. And the two events really linked up that quite nicely in terms of understanding what the problem is, and then what can we do about it on the ground.
This conversation or this initiative is to ask us, or to get us to ask ourselves the question, what can we do, or what will we do? So the Intersections of Change has been an ongoing conversation or platform where TEDx has been shedding light on some local activities and trying to inspire action. This particular conversation forms part of a two-part series where we look at climate change, looking at solutions, possible actions that have been taken, but highlighting the activities. As was highlighted in the video, this is the way TEDx Cape Town is participating in the TED Global Countdown Initiative, which is a global initiative to accelerate and champion solutions to solve the climate crisis and turn ideas into action.
The earth is burning. California is burning. Australia is burning. America is suffering the most dire storms that it's ever had. So it's not a case of it's going to happen in the future. It is happening right now, and it's accelerating. So you're in it right now, and so you do need to take action about it right now. How can you change people's thinking? Well, they've got to get educated. So we need to take them to in organizations who can tell you about it. WWF are providing information about it. Look at Al Gore, his movie. Just get yourself educated and a little bit knowledgeable about it, and it doesn't take much to do.
What you do on a daily basis impacts the environment, whether negatively or in a positive manner. It's the language that we use. It's a low hanging fruit. What do I say to those that I deal with? And how do they see what I say being consistent with my own actions? You know, a friend of mine was sharing, she was traveling across Australia with young people. And Australia, David is talking about the challenges that they're facing. I mean, also the other Europe as well, where they were encouraged to ban any waste that they are using. And this young child refused to ban plastic because he understood the impact. So that said to me, somebody took time to teach this child. Somebody took time to model in front of this child the impact of banning plastic as an example to the environment. We all have somebody we can talk to. We all have a voice, and it does not matter the kind of position where you are. Use your voice to change the landscape for a better planet.
Please focus on the here and now. Please focus on your baby steps rather than on the huge crisis. It has become much easier for me now when I'm no longer into journalism and no longer being confronted by the big, terrible picture all the time. I'm living as a recluse in a place where I'm just doing my work one step at a time, you know. It is much easier to stay focused when I keep my focus on what I am doing rather than on the big, scary picture of the whole world crumbling. It is more possible for me to take my own little efforts seriously when I focus on them rather than on the big crisis. Because when I focus on the big crisis, whatever I do seems so insignificant that I don't feel like doing it. You focus on every moment and every day and every step. And maybe give yourself a bit of love for what you are doing, even if it seems so insignificant in the context of the big picture, you know. Because for a human being to change their ways is enormous. And the big picture will always tell us we are not doing enough.
Definitely informative and eye-opening, I would say. You know, I always had this weird perspective that I need to be part of an organization to actually do something about climate change. But what I've learned is that I can start today, like I can start now. And the knowledge that I gained from the events, like I also can extend it in my community. IOC 6 and 7 were like my escape from my current situation, you know? So it was super nice. And I had the role of a speaker liaison actually for those two events. I liked it. It was stressful at some times, I'm not gonna lie, but I liked it. I had the privilege to meet the speakers before everyone else. You know, you get to see them in a different light. Although I did feel like an octopus at times.
I loved the way of how everything came by. Like I was so inspired about the energy of people, especially let's say the local champions who've never been in this kind of stage before, and they just brought a warming energy, and they just agreed to work with us. They just agreed to share their stories. I found that so amazing and inspiring for myself. My role was to populate what we call the Notion page for one of our partners, which is Missing Link, for us for them to assist us in the background. From my side, you know, I was on the tech side, and I did it like from my professional work. I'm busy at the same time. Like, oh, I thought I was not gonna handle it, but at the end of the day, man, the production went amazing. The team was very, very supportive.
Yeah, and it was also nice to work with Joburg as well, right? Like in the last event. Yeah, and we were using a new platform that was so stressful. And remember that part when like we had to look for a moderator last minute? Oh my gosh. we were having the introduction meeting. Everyone was there, and then like the speaker wasn't there. And then we had to deal with different time frames as well because she was like in India.
Oh, yes, I remember Aparna, yes. Oh, yeah, plus you were abroad at the time when everything was happening. You know, it was quite interesting because there was times where I'm in a meeting and I'm like, oh my God, all these people are not in South Africa. Like, everybody's here, everybody. Like, across the world, I'm like, how easy it is nowadays to just organize an event with people that are not physically in one place. You know what I mean? I'm like, great, interesting times they live in. It came out, wow, it came out great. Eventually, we managed to step out of it, like without even realizing that we had a few bumps in the road. But that is where I had the most respect for the team because they had like a boss.
Hi. Did you know that sunflowers have the ability to help us understand climate change? Didn't you know? I didn't know that either. Like, this is what I love about TEDx, is that you get to learn new things every day. We had 2 banners designed for our 7th conversation titled How We Can Change so that the climate doesn't have to. Our lead designer, Robin, did his research. And the first banner that you saw, he was like, sunflower has significance and it's relevant to the climate change conversation. The second banner that you see was designed according to TED Global's brand guide as part of their countdown initiative. We had 2 banners. And it was fitting because the event was double the size.
IOC 7, you biscuit. You beast. Definitely the highlight of my year, that's for sure, and the most challenging event or virtual event to date. Naturally, having had my finger in all of the pies from IOC 1 through to this here recap, by the time we got to intersections of change number 7, I was getting in my groove. I was like, oh, we've got this. The team knows what to do. No problem. And then for the big idea, we realized we needed a more powerful platform, which was awesome. It has networking potential. It has exhibition rooms, conference areas. And so we navigated through this platform called Hopin, with the help of Missing Link, of course, because, yeah, these very advanced video conferencing platforms, you can very easily get lost in the matrix. And we're still learning in the virtual space. We don't have much control over people's internet connectivities, and there's a couple of other variables that we're still navigating through. But ultimately, here we are. It's a new experience all around. It's very exciting. We've got everything absolutely sorted. And a week before the event, we find ourselves without a moderator. So myself and Renelle were like, okay, that's cool. We got this. The 2 of us will host. I work in the environmental space. I'm very passionate about mitigating climate change. I totally can do this, no problem. I wouldn't say that public speaking is my strong suit. I get quite a lot of stage fright and screen fright, if you would believe it. I can talk your ear off one-on-one, but don't put me on stage. So you're in the event. It's very exciting. It's very nerve-wracking, my gosh. And there's a million different WhatsApp groups and everyone's talking to one another, and all of a sudden, I see that one of our speakers, the first speaker, has dropped off the network. And so now I'm, trying to remain coherent because I'm full of nerves, and also trying to navigate around how am I going to change the script that I have practiced a million times in the shower, in the car, how am I going to change the script so that the audience doesn't realize that this has just happened? And does this moving part affect other moving parts? And that was the most challenging part of the event for me, because trying to coordinate the event and host is incredibly challenging. Wow, it was quite something. But because it pushed me so far out of my comfort zone, there was so much growth in that, and that's why it was the highlight of my year. It was.
So Conversation 7 was ultimately about creating space for local climate change champions to share their story, to share practical tips of how we, as ordinary citizens in South Africa, can take small steps to help mitigate the risks and the impact of climate change. What made this event extra special is that we got to collaborate with the TEDx Johannesburg team. They helped us to select our 6 amazing local climate change champions. And they included Andrew Oddington, the founder of the Regenerative Agricultural Association of South Africa. They're a nonprofit that's working to stop the catastrophic consequences of industrial agriculture. And Chad Robertson is the CEO and co-founder of Regionize. They are like a residential recycling solution and ultimately on a mission to just make recycling more accessible and inclusive. Joshua Ngoma, founder and chief enabler of Enterprising Africa Regional Network. They focus on creating a space for young, successful African entrepreneurs interested in the agricultural sector to help develop and understand the sector. We also have Bronwyn Jones, the owner of Bokashi brand. They produce or manufacture Bokashi, and ultimately it's aimed at reducing global warming through diverting food waste from landfills. Then we also had Abe Cambridge. He's an energy entrepreneur and the founder of Sun Exchange, and they ultimately are an online solar marketplace, unifying people and organizations across the globe, to take collective action towards clean energy future. We also had Candice Mustard, the founder of WasteEd, and they ultimately help you to get better at recycling and managing your waste. I absolutely loved the event. Everyone there had an amazing experience through this new platform that we use, Hopin, and we could go into networking rooms to have real authentic conversations with each climate change champion. It was amazing. We had fun. It was a new platform, a new experience, and the largest virtual event of the year. We pulled it off. I'm super excited. Why? Because we were bold enough to just go for it, to just do it. And as you heard from Tomato and Cindy, it was an experience and a half.
So we got the message, we were put on that call, IOC 8 and 9, not one event, but 2 events that we now had to do. Back to back, 2-part series. We're like, what the heck? Never done this before, like curate a whole event. And they were like, no, now you got 2.
In under a month, let's add.
Oh my gosh, talk about stress. But we did it.
We did it, and it was successful. I would say it was very successful.
I would say so as well. Very proud of the work that we did. Coming up with the idea, where to from here. I mean, like, we're all students, we're all youth. So we were trying to think, what would we sign up for? Like, what do we want to hear? What do we need to hear? What could we learn from? And I mean, that's really what guided our whole thinking process, I think,
Absolutely. And I think one of the interesting things that we did is you had a list of all the youth events and all the past speakers. And we sat down and like studied them all and went, what speaks to us like right now, moment, and who do we want to check in with? And it just seemed that the big idea came to us like so naturally, although the name certainly didn't. Like, it took ever to come up with the title, Where to From Here. I think that in creating the name, we, curating the event, we identified the speakers we wanted to speak to, we had an idea set, and then we spent 45 minutes drafting like a list of 17 names. And we're no, it doesn't speak to my soul. It's not important enough.
because the name is so important. Like that's the first thing you see from the event, you know, like where to from here, and then creating the creative like the graphics to go with it, you know, like how would it all link in. And that's another thing, like Colin did such an amazing job creating like those little icons, you know, and the colors put together. Like I love how each character was like a different career, you know, just
Exactly.
like built into the theme so nicely, which I loved so much. Do you want to share some of the main takeaways?
Absolutely. So we had Vuyo Jaboda join us as our MC.
You know, I think for me, having to have written my book at the age of 21 was something that I really didn't think that I would do at such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw the impact of what writing had, not only to my life, but to the lives of others reading and engaging with my book. So it was, I then had to go about and think about that this thing, writing, this thing, books and authoring is such a powerful tool to go about and take people's ideas, ideologies, and go about and reshape how the world is doing and where the world is going. Now that we're in a global pandemic, the world needs to understand that it's time for us to get to share things that are going on, get to share new ideas, get to restructure the world. And one of the best ways to do that is in literature. So I advocate for anyone and for everyone to go about and at least write one book, at least write something that will also have to kind of go about and share with future generations to come, to say this is what was going on during lockdown inside in the world. This was a global pandemic, and this is how, as a world, as a global community, we conquered it. And the best way to do that is through writing. So everyone watching, go write that book.
You know, like we had Vellani speak about entrepreneurship, Caitlin speak about self-care and self-love. We had Lusanda talk about what it means to be a global citizen and how to be authentic in like the social media digital world. Such dynamic individuals working on so many different elements in their lives. But from like our 1 hour, 30-minute event, the key takeaways that we took out were, if you want to figure out like where to from here, how to grow and how to make a change in your life, the first thing you need to do is like get out of your comfort zone. You need to seize the opportunities that are presented to you. And if you feel that there aren't any presented to you, you need to go out and create them. Lusanda also reminded us like this really wonderful piece of advice. She said, you are the only person you can be. There's nothing boring or blasé about that. And I thought it was so powerful, and it still lingers with me weeks after the event.
There's nothing more intoxicating than being confidently you, because nobody can take that away from you.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's something that you know truly can't be faked, and I think that's what people are wanting to discover more of. You get a lot of, like you were saying, just the fakeness. Like there's a Snapchat dysmorphia where people are, you know, wanting to look so much like somebody that they don't even know online, so much so they're willing to get surgery, risking their lives just to change who they are. There's obviously fake news. You can see from even just the US elections that just have taken place. We're in an information age of disinformation. So I feel like, yeah, I just want people to know that you know, you are the only person that you can be. Do you know what I mean? And there's nothing blasé or bland about that, because nobody else can do it. And that's where authenticity comes from. And it's relatability at the end of the day.
A key takeaway was when Vellani emphasized during the Q&A section that like success is not the same for everyone. It's incredible and it's relative.
I think this idea of success is relative. And I also think in some cases it is an absolute dependent on which task you're trying to fulfill. And I think of it like a relay race. So if you look at a 400-meter relay race of 4 athletes running 100 each, Vuyo could be doing her first 100, but she gets to the point where she passes the baton on to Lusanda, who then passes on to myself, and then I pass on to Caitlin. I think success is incremental, and I think as long as we're making things better than when we first found them, I think that is a success in and of itself. So if we could lift generations out of poverty through entrepreneurship, I think that is a fundamental success. And then that next generation will have to, do what Lusanda said and help us move away from the information of disinformation age. And we saw that with China, who in 2007 went from being a production economy to a consumption economy and effectively lifted 300 million people out of poverty. And that was a success that maybe Chairman Mao couldn't have envisioned. And likewise, the current president probably has his own definition of success. So I think it is relative, it is achievable, but the overall arch is a perpetual mission that we have to continue pursuing irrespective, because there will always be problems.
Yeah, hashtag African commodity, Vilani, right?
Know it.
And that was really powerful, because I think as youth, we do try and say, oh, well, you know, this is success for that person, so that's what I need to try and do. And realizing that we could do and be whatever we want is really powerful.
I love that. I love that. No, it was such an amazing conversation. And I mean, that was Friday. And then we still had the workshop the next day with Caitlin, you know, and that was like a build off of her conversation the night before. And the whole workshop was around change.
Yeah, she spoke to us about how change is the only constant in our lives. And that although resisting change is easy, it's the thing that holds you back.
Change has two options. You can either resist it or you can accept and embrace it. So for a while, I was resisting change. And that's what was keeping me in a bad space, mentally and emotionally. So when you resist change, which is what happened to me, you are essentially resisting life. Because life, as much as you are the driving force behind what you do in your life and what you create in your life, life happens, right? Like we have no control over external factors. So life throws experiences your way that are there to move and shape and shift you. And if you're resisting that, no wonder why there's no wonder why you're feeling stuck and stagnant. So embracing and accepting change is one of the keys to really allowing life to happen. And that's what I did when I came back. This year was supposed to be a year full of personal growth and finding myself overseas, but I found myself actually doing that in the comfort of my own home with my family. And that's what I say about plans don't normally just go your way. As much as you feel that life is dragging you down, and it does feel like that a lot of the time, you feel like life is against you, I truly believe that life really does want what's best for you. It throws experiences your way that are challenging and hard, of course, but at the end of the day, growth cannot happen without pain and struggles. And if I had to ask every one of you today, like if you think back to a time when you built character, when you became stronger in your life, where you grew, I think most of you will say that happened after going through something challenging and experiencing something difficult.
So those were some great insights. But Alex, I have to ask, like, what were some of the funniest or stressful things about IOC 8? Because I'm thinking of one and I think you know what I'm thinking of.
I mean, okay, yeah. So the very first thing that jumps into my mind was the panel discussion where Vuya's Wi-Fi dropped for like a minute. It was the longest minute of my life. Because in one of our meetings, Vuya had Wi-Fi issues, you know, and I was like, Vuya, I need your Wi-Fi to work because you're an amazing MC and you do it so well, and I need you to MC this event. Like, I don't want to do it, you know? And then the event went like really well. Like there was not a single tech problem, you know, it was like great Wi-Fi all the way. And I was like, perfect, you know? And this panel discussion, there was like 10 minutes left of it before the event was going to end. I was relaxing in my chair. I was like, nothing's going to go wrong. I'm just like chilling here, watching it. And then all of a sudden I see she freezes and I'm like, And I'm like, oh, she's frozen. And then suddenly the missing link thing comes up and they're like requesting for you to be on screen. I was like, I'm not ready. Oh my gosh, Alex, okay. You know, like fixing. And then I had no idea what the conversation was anymore. You know, I went totally blank. I come onto the screen. I'm like, hi guys. You know? I'm like, so, and now I have like no idea what question they were on, what they finished off of. And I was like, okay, Alex, there's a Q&A function. Just read a question, you know? So now I'm looking at the questions, and it looked like the most complicated sentence of my life. And I was like, what is the same?
You handled it. You did it. Absolutely. I think like one of the only things I did want to say is that what I really loved about these two conversations, ISC 8 and 9, is that they provided practical tips for like our audience, one in their life. And I thought that with all of like the stories and the anecdotes they told us, they also provided these practical tips about if we're sitting there looking around going, well, you know, where do I go to from here in these facets of my life? They gave answers. And so I left the event just on like such a high, feeling good and so positive to like take on absolutely anything. It was remarkable.
And I'm so happy that I got to do it with you and the team. It was really awesome.
I know, it's been such a great experience. And just like a major shout out to everyone who put any IOC event together, because now that we've done it and we see all the work that goes in, it's incredible what everybody takes on to make it happen. And I'm so proud to be part of the team and so happy.
Amazing. You. Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Robin. I'm the lead designer for TEDx Cape Town and Intersections of Change for 2020. Working with Cape Town this year has been awesome. The people are amazing, especially the teams. And yeah, I hope 2021 is going to be even better. Thank you so much.
Hey, all of you amazing TEDx Cape Town followers. Keegan from Missing Link here, the backstage crew that has been supporting the TEDx team, putting together all of these amazing online events for the Intersections of Change. It has been super, super exciting for us to be working with the team and also working with all of our amazing speakers. We understand that it's been a big challenge moving from in-person events to online events, but not only for our speakers, but also for you as an audience member. Used to sitting in a stage or sitting in an auditorium, engaging with some of the audience members, engaging with the speakers, and now things have changed. And from the feedback that we've seen, from the engagement that we've seen on the platform, super, super excited that everybody is moving and adapting to this new way of seeing events online. And we absolutely cannot wait for what next year holds. It's been a great, great pleasure and a treat working with the team, and the collaboration that we've got is absolutely amazing. The speakers have given us so much amazing content over the last few events. We have learned heaps and heaps and heaps from that, and we cannot wait to see what the future holds. So until then, we'll see you next year. Stay safe, come back fresh, ready for some more amazing content on the online space. From us at Missing Link, lots of love. Peace.
Of kind of, you know, reflecting on it now and what could be changed or what was different, I find that a difficult question to answer and even a difficult reflection to make because, you know, from a technical level, how we come together to share ideas online, how we meet together, how we connect, literally connect as humans, but connect virtually, has changed so much over the last year that to reflect and say, well, there might be elements of this that we could have done differently or would redo in a different way now would almost be ahistorical. Here was a crazy time in our lives, a pandemic we've never lived through. As a TEDx Cape Town volunteer team, putting together a series of conversations that came out of an idea that was sparked between two volunteers on the team and really brought to life by a whole host of team members and a lot of planning and discussion. And yet still, looking back at that recording, you know, there were probably 5, 6, 7 things where I could immediately go, oh, we could have done that. Oh, we could have done that. But again, would have been completely ahistorical to go back and change those things. There was just so much that we didn't even know back then. The one thing that I think was very funny is in that, like, if you wait till you're ready, you'll never get started spirit, we did overlook some elements that maybe we should have thought about for 5 seconds more. And the first one was, you'll see in the video that Emer is in portrait mode and I'm in landscape mode. And I remember after the event having a look at each of our backstage setups. And I remember Emer showing us her backstage setup, which was literally the most DIY setup. And just thinking to myself, oh boy, yeah, we just did a thing without any clue of how we were going to, like, you know, make sure the lighting was right and how we were going to make sure that, you know, the resolution of the filming was right, which in any given year for TEDx Cape Town, our AV team would be on it. Our tech rehearsal would have ironed out all the kinks. Suddenly, when you're in the online space, that just flies out the window. And we were figuring it out as we went along. So that was funny to see. But actually, more than anything, I look back at that video with such a lot of humility and fondness of what we've been able to do, and looking at it as the first in a series of conversations that came thereafter to say, wow, what an evolution. And I'm so incredibly proud to be part of this team and to see how we're just a team that pulls together and says, all right, plot twist, start again. And I think that's what makes being part of this team super special.
Absolutely huge thank you. A huge thank you goes, special thanks. Well, I think what I'm going to say is a special thank you. I've got to say it really well.
Special thank you, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing this experience with us. Well, thank you for sharing this experience with us. That sounds like.
No, it doesn't.